Hi, I'm Matt Shepard, and coming up on this edition of Shep, Shower, and Shave, I'm wondering if you should start to believe, and I know that's a scary situation for you, and then some Tiger discussion a little bit later on in our podcast as well. We're brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Heating and cooling employers are desperate for trained technicians. Where do you go? You go to Northwestern Tech. HVAC is all they teach. They've perfected their hands-on program over the last 38 years. Find them on their website, northwesterntech.edu. We're brought to you by Hungry Howie's. Folks, families eat pizza at least once a week. It's an easy sell for a fundraiser for your sports team or your school group. Go to doughraiser.com. That's D-O-U-G-H, razor.com. And we're brought to you by Nate Noth Designs. Find his work on Instagram or on Facebook. Lions are 3-1. How many people thought that was going to happen? Yeah, not many. It looks like a playoff team. Absolutely it does. Now, there's a lot of teams in the NFL right now that have surprised you. But I read this morning, and it's from an ESPN website that suggests the top 10 surprises in the NFL. And the Lions are one of them because of their takeaways. Now, in case you don't know, last year they created just 14 takeaways. This year they've created 11 already. They are a +9 in the turnover takeaway category. Very important. And why is it important? Well, I'll read you last year's teams that were best in takeaway giveaway difference, okay, or turnover margin. Kansas City, playoff team. Oakland, playoff team. New England, Super Bowl champion. Atlanta, NFC champion. Green Bay, playoff team. Dallas, playoff team. Pittsburgh, playoff team. You get the drift, right? You understand where it's going. You want to be able to take away the football. You want to be able to treasure it, but you want to be able to take it away. And Detroit has done just that. So this article reads, the Lions are a good team that might actually be unlucky because of what took place against Atlanta. And going into the season, they were expected to make the playoffs at a 21% belief rate. Now, they are at 56%. The Lions forced 3 turnovers yesterday. Fumbles. They wrote 3 from Case Keenum and the Minnesota offense on Sunday. Case Keenum had nothing to do with those fumbles, by the way. So how many people thought this was coming? Not many. I get it. But here's what they said. Here's what they wrote, I should say. And here's what you can read into this. On Sunday, the Vikings fumbled 3 times. Detroit managed to recover all 3. One of those fumbles, and look, not every fumble is on one specific individual. Sometimes it's a combination. Like I don't know why Minnesota ran that Wildcat, but they decided to run the Wildcat, and they got it all mixed up. So was that on the running back, the person out of the Wildcat? Who knows? I mean, I suppose you can eventually blame one specific person. However, we don't know the offensive scheme. We don't know who is necessarily at fault there. Sometimes you'll see a guy fumble because a guard gets run over, for crying out loud. Well, the guard doesn't get credited for causing the fumble, right? Or being in charge of that fumble. It's the guy who actually fumbled it. But anyway, so they write that Detroit is a team that forced the 3 fumbles. Dalvin Cook appeared to injure his knee and fumbled it away without being touched. Well, listen, that's not true at all. Tavon Wilson put his helmet on the fumble. I don't know what game this person who wrote this was watching, but that's not right. Sure, he appeared to injure his knee, but he was touched. Lions recovered. Now they've recovered 4 of the 6 fumbles opposing offensive have placed on the ground this season. And while forcing fumbles is a skill, teams have no ability to recover a particularly high percentage of those fumbles. We would expect Detroit to recover 50% of their forced fumbles going forward. In other words, they're trying to take something away. They're saying, well, they forced 6. They've recovered 4 of them. That's too high of a rate. It continues. Minnesota, coincidentally, serves as an example of how you can't really build a defense around an incredible takeaway rate. Last year, a good example, they racked up 11 takeaways in their first 4 games, ended up with 16 in their first 6 contests. I would like to talk to this writer and say, no one's saying that they're going to rely strictly on their takeaways. They're saying that's an important element to success. Special teams is an important element to success. The ability to punt the ball and have a minimal, if no return whatsoever. Jeff Locke yesterday averaged 45.5 yards net per punt. In other words, he's punting the ball away from the Minnesota returners. Don't give them a chance to return the punt. This article writes, Minnesota started 5-0, but went just 2-7 during its turnover-poor stretch, which eventually cost the Vikings. The Lions should have a good enough offense to avoid bottoming out if the defense does head toward the mean in turnover rate. But their defense is running a high-wire act by relying so heavily on takeaways. It's a high-risk, high-reward model, and if the takeaways disappear, the Lions could decline quickly. Who says that's what they're relying on? That makes no sense whatsoever. Now, I'm as much to blame as anybody, okay, for reading that and giving this website some props, if you want to term it props. But I guess I'm a little confused at where they're at and why they're considering that's the only thing they're relying on. How about the fact that it's a stingy defense? They're 4th in the league in points per game against. And remember, the offense has given up 6 points in a pick 6. Where do they get off that they're relying only on the turnover rate? Just because it's a good turnover rate doesn't mean that's the only thing they're relying on. I think they hang their hat on not allowing teams to get in the end zone, and they kind of hang their hat on the fact that they're a good rush defense. Teams are averaging just 86 yards per game against them on the ground. What the hell's wrong with that? That's pretty damn good. Scoring, really important. Rush defense, pretty damn important too. And Detroit's in the top 10 in both, top 5 of one of them. Now, here's what you want to know. Or here's what I want to know, I should say, from you. Do you believe? I'm not suggesting you should believe right now, because it's 4 games deep. That's it. You're a quarter of the way through the season. Jim Schwartz was one of these guys who brought this up a while back. They narrow it down into 4 quarters. The football season is 4 quarters. First 4 games, next 4 games, third 4 games, and the final 4 games. There's your 16-game slate. Detroit's 3-1. You do that throughout the season, you're in pretty good shape. You're 12-4. Do you expect that? I don't. But I give them a ton of credit for doing what they did. The reason you might want to believe is because Detroit has been very competitive without some key members. And I know Minnesota just did the same thing, okay, because they lost Dalvin Cook for a little bit of time, right? And they may lose him for longer. They've lost some players. They lost an offensive lineman. Detroit has played this season so far without Taylor Decker. He's an important piece to that offensive line. Now, when he comes back, and will he be as good as he was a year ago, his rookie campaign? That's a lot to ask for a guy who's missed all of offseason, all of training camp, and the first 6 games of a regular campaign. That's going to be really hard. But you're hopeful, right? Okay. The last 2 games they've played without their best linebacker, Jared Davis. Yesterday, they played with Paul Warlow, who gets hurt. They played with Tahir Whitehead, who I like a lot but cannot cover. And I'm surprised Minnesota didn't expose that a little bit more with Kyle Rudolph. And Nick Bellore. And Nick Bellore started a ton of games for San Francisco a year ago, had a career high with, I think it was 84 or 86 tackles for the Niners on a not very good team. Played pretty well yesterday. The thing that has surprised me most about the Lions so far is their ability to rush the passer. It was one of my major concerns going in. I said, Ziggy Ansah needs to return to form of 2 years ago. He has not, except for one game. I said, where is the other pass rush coming from? I think A'Shawn Robinson's been outstanding. I think Anthony Zettel has been their best defensive lineman so far, and not just because he had 2 sacks and 3 tackles and he's been disruptive, but because he's done it consistently. He's been really good. This guy's a 6th-round draft pick, man. This is where you build a football team. This is where Bob Quinn gets high marks. Missed on Antoine Williams, unfortunately, has hit a home run with Anthony Zettel, has hit a home run with Miles Killebrew. He's got a starter at the left guard in the 3rd round. That's pretty damn good. It's not just the 1st round. I've said this ad nauseum for years. If you want to be a really good football team, you need those first 3 rounds have to be rock solid. Now, it's concerned me that a guy like Tease Tabor has not been able to play. Can't beat out Nevin Lawson. That's a problem. However, give them credit for what they've been able to do defensively. But if you want a reason to believe is, I think this offense is going to click. I think there's too much talent not to. They won yesterday without Kenny Golladay. They won yesterday without Taylor Decker. They won yesterday without Jared Davis. And they won yesterday with a gimpy Ziggy Ansah, a less than 100% Ziggy Ansah. Impressive. They won yesterday with a decent running game. Amir Abdullah was on the verge of becoming one of those first backs to rush for 100 yards in who knows how long, right? 55 regular season games without a 100-yard rusher, most in the NFL. Now it's up to 56. Baltimore's second with 15 or 16 now. Think about that. They're winning because Matt Prater is hitting field goals. He had made 11 straight of 50 yards or more until he missed one just before the half yesterday. He had made 7 straight field goals in general overall. That's pretty damn good. They're winning despite that offensive line allowing 6 sacks. First time that's happened since November of 2015 against Kansas City. Too many knockdowns, too many sacks in general. But overall, when you're winning, it doesn't matter. Look, they win last year, and this is me trying to convince you to believe, and that's really not my job. Go ahead and be doubtful. The way this team has treated you in the past, I understand it. But last year, it required 8 fourth-quarter comebacks by the offense. And they won 9 games. And they made the playoffs. And you didn't believe. Because you didn't think that was sustainable. Fair enough. Stafford's done it 29 times in his career, but you want playoff wins, so do I. You want a division championship, so do I. You want home field advantage in the playoffs, me too. So the expectation is there. The way this team is playing may be creating more of an expectation for you. Not necessarily believing, but more of an expectation. Granted, I'll give you that. But the offense stages comebacks last year. They win games. You cheer. You get your hopes up a little bit. But there's also that question in the back of your mind, can't be sustained. Why can't defense sustain it? And I'm not talking about the takeaways. That's a huge part of it. Absolutely. I'm talking about their stout defense, an inability to run against them, a better tackling team, a deeper team. Why can't that, coupled with an offense that can stage comebacks, they've done it already this year, why can't that make you believe? Why does that not make you go, all right, they've put some things together? Think about it for a second. Their starting putter is out, Sam Martin, who's a nice enough guy, but obviously not the brightest guy out there because of this stupid injury that he had in the offseason. Okay? They bring in Jeff Locke. He's been really good. They lose their starting left tackle. They bring in Greg Robinson. He wasn't great yesterday by any stretch. He's not nearly as talented as Taylor Decker. I don't mind him as a backup. but he's playing as a starter. Their offense has not been great. It has not clicked. Marvin Jones hasn't done what we thought. Golden Tate's been pretty darn good. I thought Darren Fells yesterday was outstanding, right? So they're still waiting to click on all cylinders. The offense has a lot of room to grow. And yet they're 3-1. They're doing it without certain key elements. Depth guys stepping forward. Remember, against Atlanta, there was no Travis Swanson. How important was Travis Swanson yesterday? I said this on a podcast last week. Don't underestimate the importance of Detroit's starting center. He gets no love whatsoever. The focus has been on Rick Wagner, highest paid right tackle in the league, TJ Lang, local guy coming home, and Taylor Decker on the left side. Nothing said about Travis Swanson. He doesn't mind it. He likes it that way. Guess what? He deserves a hell of a lot more credit than he's getting. He's damn good. Really, really strong in the middle. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Detroit had one of its most successful rushing games yesterday. And I'm not talking about as a team, but Amir Abdullah, career high yesterday. And it coincides with Travis Swanson coming back. So this team is winning without a lot of their key elements. You get those elements back. You put Jared Davis in the middle. You get a healthy Ziggy Ansah. You get a healthy Taylor Decker. You keep other guys in the spots. How good do you think it's going to be? The offense is going to gel. You didn't want to believe because of the offense a year ago. You're not going to believe this year because of the defense. You want it all at once. I think the offense is going to come around. I think the defense can be this good the rest of the way because it's already proven to us against some good teams that it can be. And then you've got the special teams. There's 3 parts to it. Actually, there's 4 because of coaching. And a lot of people don't believe in Jim Caldwell. They don't like his Sunday decisions. He had that team ready to play against a very good Minnesota team. That Minnesota offensive line is pretty good. Dalvin Cook is outstanding. Hated to see him go out. I really did. I want to see good players play. I feel bad for that kid because he's damn good. He had 288 total yards through the first 3 weeks, most by a Vikings running back in history. That's right, more than Adrian Peterson, more than Chuck Foreman. That's impressive. But that's a good football team. Their defense at each level, really strong. Everson Griffin, would you take him on your team? You're damn right. Spouts off a little bit too much. The guy can flat out get after the quarterback. Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, you want those guys? Me too. You want a Harrison Smith, an Xavier Rhodes, a Nate Zendejo? Absolutely. Those guys come up, they thump, they can play, Rhodes can cover. Absolutely you do that. They got a good football team. That's a good win. That's a tough place to win. Detroit's won 5 of the last 7 against Minnesota. They did it last year in dramatic comeback fashion, remember? With Matthew Stafford guiding a couple of big throws and a big run to get in a field goal range and Matt Prater hitting it and winning it. Remember that? That made you nervous and uncomfortable. Then the offense doesn't play well. The defense wins it for you this year, and it's made you nervous and uncomfortable. Folks, I keep telling people this all the time. Every single week, I've got to remind you. This is the NFL. You should know it by now. You should see how close it is. We go over 1-score games all the time. Buffalo and Atlanta, 1-score game. Rams and Cowboys, 1-score game. Panthers and Patriots, 1-score game. Jets and Jags, 1-score game. Cardinals and Niners, 1-score game. Eagles and Chargers, 1-score game. Bucks, Giants, 1-score game. Broncos, Raiders, 1-score game. As well as Detroit's. That's what the NFL wants. That's what the NFL has. That's the way the NFL's been built. You tell me the team that is lights out believability right now. Seriously. Packers got their ass kicked by Atlanta earlier this year. Atlanta just lost to Buffalo. Dallas just lost at home to the Rams. at home to the Rams, who before their win against the Cowboys were 2-1, and everyone's like, okay. They beat the Colts. They stink. They barely beat the Niners. And they lost to the Redskins. But they beat Dallas. Does that make you believe? I don't know. Dallas has been beaten at home by the Rams, and they got thumped by Denver. How do you feel about that? Vikings beat up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. Tampa goes out, and they beat the Giants this week. Steelers lost to the Browns, bounced back and beat the Ravens. Patriots suddenly seem very vulnerable at home. How do the Panthers get blitzed at home by New Orleans and then go to New England and beat the Patriots? That's what I mean. That's a weird situation with this league. Broncos, I think, are a really good defensive football team. They just lost to the Bills last week, but then they go out and they beat the Raiders, who are really good. I think it's the beauty of the NFL. I embrace that. It keeps me wondering. You've heard of these suicide pools, right? You're probably in some of them. Which team do I take? I ask you the same thing. You're probably shaking your head. I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm not going to sit here and declare that the Lions are ready to take that next step and the Lions are going to make the playoffs guaranteed and all that other stuff. No. I did think this team was going to be a good team. I think they had talent enough to win the division because it's probably more an indictment on the division itself. This was a game in Minnesota I did not feel comfortable about. Did not think they would win. But look at what they've done. I'm encouraged with how they've done it. I don't want to say I'm glad that Matthew Stafford had a poor game yesterday, but I like the fact that Detroit has proven it can win in different ways. It's not always relying on Matt Prater, and it's not relying on Matthew Stafford. The defense won that game yesterday. That should make everybody feel good. The Lions actually could count on a running game. And you see how important the running game is? God bless it. It is so vital to be able to just show the other team you're capable of it. You don't have to rush for 160 yards every single week. That is not my desire, and I don't think that's any coach's desire. That's not who they are. That is not their DNA. It is not their identity. Their identity is a passing team. That is not unique in the game of football. If I said to you, if we did a test right now, what are the Green Bay Packers? You'd say Aaron Rodgers, they're a passing team. What are the New Orleans Saints? They're Drew Brees, they're a passing team. What are the Falcons? They're a passing team. What are the Cowboys? Now, they're probably good. They've got really good balance. So it might be unique. The Panthers, really good defense, and Cam Newton is a surprise. You know, as in every single Sunday. A surprise, like he'll surprise you with a good run here. He can throw the football. In other words, he's versatile. Patriots, they're a passing team, right? Steelers a little bit more balanced in that regard. The Texans, I would say Deshaun Watson has proven they're a passing team. Cardinals are a passing team. Eagles, to a certain extent, passing team. Buccaneers, again, the surprise. Jameis Winston's going to surprise you, do something that maybe you're not used to seeing. Raiders are a passing team. More often than not, you're going to have teams, that's the identity. The identity is a passing ball club. So the Lions are that. There's nothing wrong with that. You can embrace that. You can tout that. You can trumpet that. There's nothing wrong with it. But the best teams, Kansas City's a good example, you have to be able to show you can run the football. So the defense on the other side said, you know what? I respect the running game. It makes play action work. And by the way, I've never been a believer that running is always just handing the ball off. If you want to take Theo Riddick and just arc him out, swing pass, to me that's an extension of the running game. A screen game is an extension of the running game. It's not always, I'm going to turn my back to the defense and hand the football off. Should be a hell of a game next week because Carolina, obviously, with Luke Kuechly, really good defense, and Cam Newton does not go down like Case Keenum and Matt Ryan. That's going to be a difficult challenge. Now, you hope that Cam Newton shows up that throw 3 interceptions against New Orleans instead of the one who was really good against the Patriots yesterday, who threw for 316 yards and 3 touchdowns. Shep Shower and Shave is brought to you by Northwestern Tech. Call them today. 248-358-4006. They are the HVAC school where you can get trained, certified, and into the field in only 10 and a half months. We're brought to you by Nate Knopf Designs. Find his work on Instagram and on Facebook. He's the designer of the Shep Shower and Shave logo. And by Hungry Howie's, Michigan's based pizza company known for the original flavored crust pizza. Also has the best fundraiser around called Dough Raiser. It's simple. Your sports team and school group can sell Hungry Howie's pizza certificates to raise lots of money for your organization, and it's really simple. Don't worry about the raffles and the car washes and going door to door. Go to doughraiser.com. Tiger season is over, thankfully. They had the most losses and fewest wins in the majors this year with the San Francisco Giants. Brad Ausmus is out. That whole coaching staff should be out. If I had to keep somebody, I would probably keep Omar Vizquel. Not because of his first base coaching duties, but because of the respect he has in that clubhouse and because of his ability to nurture and tutor young players. And by the way, for the record, I think Brad Ausmus would do a good job with the young club too. I've said that before. This team needs a fresh start, though. Rich Doobie, goodbye. Dave Clark, goodbye. Gene Lamont, goodbye. Matt Martin, see you later. Lloyd McClendon, goodbye. Needs a fresh start. Who that is, Dave Martinez, Alex Cora, even Omar Vizquel, I don't know. We'll soon find out. Whoever it is, I hope it's a manager that is, well, a good communicator, and a guy who can kind of teach his players how to be pros. I don't think you want to rely on Miguel Cabrera and Ian Kinsler, if Kinsler's back, to be doing that. So we need a developer. We, as in Detroit, the Tigers, need a developer. Somebody who can take a young player, Jacoby Jones, and make them better. Somebody who's going to take Jamer Candelario and form him into a really good third baseman. Somebody who can do that with Nick Castellanos in right field. Somebody who can do that with a Christian Stewart if he's called up. Build upon the second half of what James McCann was able to do. A developer and communicator. Those are my 2 primary traits that I want the new Tigers manager to have. With this season over, you look back at it and you wonder, who was their most consistent player? Well, their most consistent player was Justin Upton, but he was traded away to the Angels. So the most consistent player, the Tiger of the year, is Nick Castellanos. What Nick Castellanos did this year, how he embraced the leadership role that he was almost forced into just because of the loss of so many other players, I think tells you a little something about Castellanos. I think in a season that everybody saw going south, Castellanos kept looking forward. He batted .272, which is right around what he did the year before, but his power numbers were up. He had a career high in walks. He had a career high in RBIs with 101. He had a career high in homers with 26. He had a career high in triples and led the league with 10. He had a career high in doubles with 36. He had a career high in hits with 167. His defense stunk at third base, but he had career highs in everything. Runs, hits, doubles, triples, homers, ribbies, even stolen bases, walks, on-base percentage. Well, actually, on-base percentage was a little higher last year. He's the Tiger of the year. Really, there's no question about it. I mean, look, I know I was just talking with Jeff Dullock, who works for us here at Yellow Flag Productions, and he was complaining that somebody had, I think it was Lynn Henning, had written that it was Ian Kinsler. And I thought, how in the world can you say Ian Kinsler? And then I went back and I read Lynn's comments, and he said no one played his position with steadier fire. No one performed more persistently. No Tigers player in 2017 more personified the professional baseball player than Ian Kinsler. Look, Ian Kinsler's been a hell of a pro here. He has. And it's difficult circumstances for a 35-year-old who's been around for 12 years being in a clubhouse like that. He batted .236, Lynn. And that's the worst of his career. He had on base percentage of, .310. Again, the worst of his career. He had 52 RBIs. That's the second worst of his career. 21 of his 22 homers were solo bombs. I'm not going to blame him for that because he's most of the leadoff. He had 130 hits, man. That's the second fewest he's had. And the fewest was his rookie campaign. I don't know what you're watching. I don't know how you can say that. He's a pro's pro. I'll give you that. Stood there in front of his locker every single day, talking to members of the media after a win, after a loss, before a game and after. All right? But stop with the whole no one went about their position with more fire. He never lets down. You're right. Are you suggesting others have? I'll tell you this. I would put Upton, Castellanos, Matuk, and Presley ahead of what Ian Kinsler did this year. There's no question that Justin Verlander would have been the pitcher of the year, but he was moved. So you'd probably move on to Michael Fulmer. The biggest surprise would be Alex Presley and Mikey Matuk combined for me. The biggest disappointment would be Ian Kinsler and Miguel Cabrera. Lynn Henning wrote the biggest disappointment position player is Jose Iglesias. What? And Iglesias defensively is unbelievable. He really is. You can't. Would you deny that Jose Iglesias is the best defensive player on this team? I hope not, because he is. You're saying he's the biggest disappointment? Based on what? He drove in a career-high 54? He had a career-high in doubles? He had a career-high in homers? His on-base percentage wasn't very good. I'll tell you who the biggest disappointment for me is, and I know he's been hurt, but it's Miguel Cabrera. I don't know how people could sit there with kid gloves constantly complaining about Miguel Cabrera. Seriously. I mean, it's almost as if Detroit members of the media are afraid of him. We know he's a Hall of Fame player. He batted .249 this year, folks. By far and away, the worst of his career. He had 16 homers. By far and away, the worst of his career, unless you count an 87-game stretch, his rookie campaign. All right? He had over 100 strikeouts. He had the fewest hits he's ever collected. Lynn Henning brings up Jose Iglesias because Jose Iglesias might be traded in the offseason. Jose Iglesias batted the same as what he did a year ago, .255, which is slightly disappointing. He has helped or made a difference defensively. Something Miguel Cabrera cannot say. Again, I know he played with 2 herniated discs. He still went out there and said, Skip, I can play today 130 times. Stop being afraid of athletes in this town. It's okay to say a Hall of Fame player who has been a great generational Tiger player was the most disappointing this year. You could throw the asterisk in there that, hey, you know what? He was hurt. Sure. There's a lot of guys who play hurt, by the way. But I give him props for playing through it. But you could also make the argument that he hurt his team quite a bit. That's crazy to think that Ian Kinsler was the Tigers player of the year, and then the most disappointing position player of the year is Jose Iglesias. Pitchers, hell, you could have a ton. Jordan Zimmerman would get my vote. If you want to say Daniel Norris, okay, I'll buy it. But I would tell you, and maybe I shouldn't bring this up, but when you're paying a guy the amount of money that you're paying Jordan Zimmerman, and the expectation is, and maybe this is a carryover from last year, and again, he's a good guy. Come on, man. He's got an ERA of well over 6. Again, a career worst. He gave up 108 earned runs. Again, a career worst. He gave up 29 bombs. Again, a career worst. And his whip was 1.5. A career worst. We're looking at Daniel Norris as the biggest disappointment on that pitching staff? Are you kidding me? How do you avoid the two big name guys? And before you say, well, they can't carry this team, they're getting paid to help carry this team. And if that's your argument, then there's no question you should go back to Nick Castellanos or Justin Upton, because both those guys carried this team to what was an awful season, but still carried them offensively. Shep, Shower, and Shave, brought to you by Hungry Howie's, by Northwestern Tech, and by Nate Knopf Designs. We'll be back later in the week. We'll talk a little Michigan State, preview Lions and Panthers, and a whole lot more. Thanks for listening, and please support our advertisers, our sponsors, here on Shep, Shower, and Shave.